Have you ever compared your financial situation to someone else's? There are nights when you lie awake, staring at your bank account balance and wondering, have my peers saved more than I have? Or maybe you're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, seeing people flaunt their latest luxury vacation or a brand new car, and you find yourself thinking, how can they afford all of that so easily? In this video, I'm going to show you the truth behind the financial lives of everyday people. And honestly, the numbers I'm about to share might shock you. Some of them might make you feel more secure than you thought. But others, they could be a serious wake-up call. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand on the financial map, compared to the general population. My name is Jack, and I share financial knowledge to help people understand money, improve their personal finances, and build lasting wealth. If you're looking to get your money in order and move faster toward financial freedom, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Before diving into the fascinating data, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what do you imagine the financial picture of an average person looks like? Do you picture someone following a solid plan, steadily building wealth for a peaceful retirement? Or do you see someone barely making it from paycheck to paycheck, just hoping things don't fall apart? The truth is, most of us have no real idea what normal finances look like. We tend to guess based on our friends, coworkers, or neighbors, but most of what we imagine doesn't match reality. And here's why this topic is so powerful. Knowing these numbers isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It gives you something far more valuable: data. The kind of data that helps you make smarter, more informed decisions about how you manage your money. Imagine this. When you want to get healthier, you probably wonder how much the average person weighs, or how they work out. If you're trying to improve your grades, you likely compare your scores to others in the class. Money works the same way. Knowing where you stand financially compared to others helps you adjust your spending, saving, and investing strategies more wisely. Let's begin with something everyone has: income. Every time you get your paycheck, do you ever wonder, is this more or less than what most people make? According to the latest data from the US, Bureau of Labor Statistics, a full-time employee earns just over $1,000 per week on average. That adds up to around $52,000 per year before taxes. Here's the important part. This number refers to individual income. It does not include your spouse's or anyone else's earnings. And this is the median income, meaning half of people earn more and half earn less. If you're making about $26 per hour, you're right in line with the typical full-time worker. But remember, that $52,000 is before taxes and deductions. After federal and state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare, your actual take-home pay is likely between $35,000 and $40,000 a year, depending on where you live. Suddenly, that number doesn't feel so big anymore, does it? Still, income is just the starting point. The real story lies in what people do with that money. And that's where things get both fascinating and a little alarming. Now let's talk retirement savings, where many people are in for a shock. Recent surveys from the Federal Reserve show that the median retirement savings in America is about $65,000. But hold on, that number only includes people who actually have a retirement account. And it spans all age groups. Here's the real shocker. 1 in 4 Americans has no retirement savings at all. That means when they reach retirement age, they'll have exactly $0 set aside. In other words, for every 4 people you meet, 1 is planning to rely entirely on Social Security to survive in retirement. And that's assuming the program still exists when they get there. Now, for those who do have savings, things vary a lot by age. Let's break it down. People under 25, their average retirement savings is less than $2,000. If you're 23 and just started working, saving $2,000 isn't bad at all. But it highlights a key truth. The earlier you start saving, the bigger your advantage later. Those aged 25 to 34 have saved an average of around $14,000. A bit more, yes. But considering that they've been working for years and they're hitting their financial stride, that's still not much. For people aged 65 and older, the median retirement savings jumps to about $88,000. Sounds better, right? But let's zoom in to see what that really means. If you retire with $88,000 and followed the common 4% withdrawal rule, you'd only be able to take out about $3,500 per year. That's less than $300 per month. Let that sink in. $300 a month to live on after you stop working. Ask yourself, could you survive on that? Even if you've already paid off your home and no longer have to worry about mortgage payments, $300 a month is still not enough to cover your basic needs like food, electricity, water, and healthcare. That's why knowing these numbers is absolutely essential. If you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s and you've seen those figures, you owe it to yourself to reflect seriously. Have you really saved enough for your future? Because the truth is, most people haven't. Now, let's talk about Social Security, the thing so many people are relying on. According to reports from the Social Security Administration, the average monthly benefit is about $1,550. That's roughly $18,600 a year. Sounds decent, especially if your house is paid off. But here's the catch. That's just an average. Not everyone gets that much. If you had long periods of unemployment or worked jobs with low wages, your benefit could be significantly less. In fact, for those who earned modestly their entire working lives, their retirement benefits might barely cover the basics. Just utilities and groceries, if that. On the other hand, some people take a totally different approach. They plan their retirement finances as if they'll receive no Social Security at all. If they end up getting anything, they treat it as a bonus, not a guarantee. Sounds extreme? Maybe. But with the funding issues Social Security is facing, that mindset might not be such a bad idea. Now let's set retirement aside for a moment and talk about something that hits you every single day: spending habits. Do you know how much the average American household spends each month? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's around $5,577 a month. Over a year, that adds up to nearly $67,000 in expenses, which means, to simply break even, a typical household needs to bring home at least that much after taxes. Let me say that again. This is net income, not gross. So to actually have anything left to save or invest, a family needs to earn well over $67,000 a year. If we break it down, household spending covers familiar categories, but the actual amounts might surprise you. The biggest chunk? Housing. Anyone who's ever paid rent or a mortgage knows the pain. On average, a household spends about $1,885 a month on housing. That includes rent or mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. Just housing alone eats up over $22,000 a year. And if you live in a big city, you're probably laughing at that number. In places like New York or San Francisco, $800 might barely get you a tiny studio, if you're lucky. The second biggest expense is food. Families spend around $691 a month on groceries and dining out. That's over $8,000 a year, just on food. Let's be honest, if your entire family spends less than $700 a month on food, then you're either a master of budgeting or you've become an expert at surviving on instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. Transportation is another big one. The average household spends about $9 to $13 a month. That includes car payments, insurance, gas, maintenance, and public transit fares. Add it all up, and transportation alone costs nearly $11,000 a year. That's why so many financial experts say your total housing and transportation costs should never exceed half your income. Otherwise, you'll constantly struggle to stay afloat. Just combine $2,800 for housing with nearly $900 for commuting, and you're already at $2,700 a month. And that's just the start. We haven't even talked about everything else yet. Now let's shift gears to something that heavily affects your financial future, your credit score. Most people know it's important, but have no idea how their number stacks up. According to Experian, the average FICO score in the US right now is 715. On a scale from 100 to 850, that means most Americans fall into the good credit zone. The interesting thing about this score, it shows that a lot of people are doing the right things, like paying on time and keeping their debt under control. But don't get too comfortable. Just because the average is 715 doesn't mean everyone's doing okay. Many people are stuck in the 500 to 600 range and are shocked when they get denied for loans with decent interest rates. And here's the truth. Your credit score affects everything. Whether you can get a mortgage, whether you'll pay a high or low rate for a car loan, and even whether you land a job. Some employers check your credit before they hire you. The good news? Keeping a solid credit score isn't hard. Just pay your bills on time, don't max out your credit cards, and skip opening new cards just because you're tempted by a 10% discount at checkout. The formula is ridiculously simple, yet strangely, so many people still mess it up. And speaking of credit, we've got to face the biggest problem: credit card debt. This is the one that wrecks people fast. Right now, the average American household is carrying over $9,000 in credit card debt. $9,000, and this isn't like a mortgage or a car loan. There's no physical asset tied to it. This is debt from stuff you've probably already forgotten about, or that's sitting in the back of your closet collecting dust, or worse, already in the trash. What's even scarier? The interest rates. Credit cards often charge 15% to 20%, and some go as high as 20 or more. So let's say you're sitting on $9,000 of debt at a 20% interest rate. You're paying $1,800 a year in interest alone. That's $1,800 that could have been invested, grown over time, helped build your future. But instead, it's going straight into the bank's pocket. What bothers me most about credit card debt is this: it mostly comes from things we didn't even need. Yes, sometimes the card covers emergencies or unexpected bills, but in reality, a huge chunk of that $9,000 gets burned on clothes, gadgets, eating out, impulse buys from late night online shopping, or things we thought were cool but turned out to be pretty useless. And honestly, fixing this isn't complicated. Pay off your credit card balance in full each month. If you can't afford something with cash, don't put it on your card, unless it's truly urgent. If you're already carrying a balance, make paying it off your top priority, even before long-term investing. Because it doesn't make sense to chase a 7% return in the stock market while you're paying 20% interest on a credit card. Now let's talk about one of the most important numbers in personal finance: net worth. The formula is simple. Add up everything you own: your house, your car, your bank accounts, your retirement savings. Then subtract everything you owe: your mortgage, your credit card debt, your student loans, and so on. What you're left with is your net worth. According to the Federal Reserve, the average net worth of an American household is about $122,000. But just like with retirement savings, that number varies a lot by age. And some of the breakdowns might surprise you. For those under 35, the median net worth is less than $14,000. At age 25, when you're just starting out, that might be reasonable. But if you're 34 and still hovering around $14,000, it might be time to take a hard look at your financial direction. Between ages 35 and 44, the median net worth jumps to around $91,000. For those 45 to 54, it rises again to about $1,000. Then for the 55 to 64 age group, the average climbs to $2 and $12,000, and by age 65 to 74, it's roughly $266,000. What's important to understand about these numbers is that they're not just for the wealthy or lucky. They're completely achievable for most people, as long as you earn a stable income and manage your money with discipline. You don't need to be a stock market genius or launch the next big tech startup to hit these milestones. The key is simple: spend less than you earn and invest the rest. But there's another angle we can't ignore: your savings rate. So how much does the average person actually set aside? According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, after taxes, the average American saves just 6% of their income. Yes, just 6%. At first, 6% doesn't sound too bad. But think about it. Once that gets split between short-term goals like buying a car or saving for a house deposit, what's really left for long-term wealth building? Almost nothing. Imagine this: to buy a home, you might need a down payment of around $62,000. Renovating a kitchen? That could cost you $26,000. A new car? Likely over $47,000. Now, if you're only saving 6% of your income but trying to juggle all these short-term goals, how much is really left for your retirement account? Financial experts often stress the need to set aside 10 to 15% of your income just for retirement. And that's not including all the other things you still need to save for. If you want to retire early instead of grinding away until you're 70, you'll need to save way more than 10 to 15%. And here's the part that might surprise you: at what age do most people actually retire? If you guessed 65, you're only half right. Recent data shows that the average retirement age in America is about 61. At first, that sounds amazing. Retiring at 61? More time to enjoy life. Less stress, more freedom. But there's a catch. Most people can't collect full Social Security benefits until 67. So if you retire at 61, you'll need to fill a 6-year income gap on your own. And if your retirement savings are only around the national average, those 6 years won't be easy. Let's put it into perspective. Say you started working at 22 and you retire at 61. That's 39 years on the job. Almost 4 decades of early mornings, traffic, deadlines, meetings, bosses, pressure, and everything else we do to earn a paycheck. Now picture this. After nearly 40 years of work, you retire with $88,000 saved, which translates to less than $300 per month in spending money. Does that feel worth it? To me, it feels like a pretty bitter ending. Here's another number worth noting. According to the Social Security Administration, the average American who reaches age 65 will live for another 19 to 21 years. That means if you retire at 61, you'll need to fund at least 25 more years of living expenses, possibly even longer. 25 years is a long time. For many, that's more years than they spent in their careers. And during those 25 years of retirement, how many will you still be healthy enough to truly enjoy? At 61, many people still feel sharp and active, but what about at 71 or 81? Time catches up with everyone. What feels easy today might feel impossible a decade later. That's why understanding these financial numbers matters, not just for curiosity, but for real clarity. Because if the average American heads into retirement with less than $90,000 saved and carries around $9,000 in credit card debt, then something is clearly off with how we manage our money. But here's the good news, and the reason I'm sharing all of this with you. Once you understand what average really looks like, you can clearly see how to be above average. To get ahead of average, you do not need some secret formula or elite knowledge that only the wealthy have. Just by saving more than 6% of your income, you are already far ahead of most people. Simply by avoiding credit card debt, you've taken a big step ahead of the crowd. When you take control of your investments and consistently contribute to your retirement fund, you're already lapping the average. In reality, you only need basic financial discipline to beat these average numbers. You don't need a six-figure salary. You don't need a big inheritance. What you need is to manage your money with more purpose than most people. And honestly, that bar is not as high as you might think. Take this simple example. The average household in the US spends about $5,500 per month. But if you can live comfortably on $4,500, you're saving $1,000 per month, which means $12,000 per year goes straight into your investments. If you do that year after year, you'll soon find yourself on an entirely different financial level compared to your peers. This rule works with any number. If you're just slightly above average in a few key areas, the compounding effect over time creates a massive difference. Let's say your income is just a bit higher than the median, more than $52,000 a year. You save more than 6%, you stay out of credit card debt, and you consistently invest in low-cost index funds. You're going to end up with way more than $88,000 in retirement savings. What struck me most is how clearly the data reveals a gap between what people say they want and what they actually do. Almost everyone says they crave financial stability, a comfortable retirement, and a life without constant money stress. But in reality, most people live in a way that goes completely against those goals. Maybe it's because they don't actually know what the average really looks like. They assume everyone else is doing fine, so they don't feel the urgency to change anything. Or maybe they know they should do something, but they feel stuck. They don't know where to start. Or they think it's already too late to make a difference. And if any of these numbers feel a little too familiar to you, the very fact that you are here reading this and actively learning about personal finance puts you ahead of most people. You see, many people go their entire lives without ever sitting down to assess their financial situation, let alone think about what needs to change. But here's the key. Use these statistics as fuel to improve, not as an excuse to give up. Having less than $14,000 in net worth at age 35 does not mean you failed. It just means you have more work to do. And the good news is you still have 3 full decades to turn things around. Even if you're doing better than average in some areas, don't let that comfort lull you into complacency. Maybe your credit score is excellent. You have no credit card debt, but your retirement savings still needs work. Or maybe you're great at saving consistently, but you're just stashing it in a low-interest savings account instead of putting it to work through smart investments. The truth is, these numbers can be eye-opening, but they can also be deeply motivating. Because once you know what average really looks like, you get to choose. Do you settle for that? Or do you aim higher? In my opinion, you deserve more than a future where you retire at 61 with just $88,000 and pray that Social Security doesn't collapse. You deserve more than a life where your income disappears each month just to cover bills and credit card payments. You deserve the peace of mind that comes from having your finances in order. These numbers, they only represent the current average. They are not your destiny. Use them as your starting line, not your finish line. Because once you realize how most people handle money, you can start doing the opposite and create a future that's far from average. And that decision, it is entirely yours.